Okay, I want you to picture this. It's November 12th, 1996. A quiet evening over the farmlands of Haryana, India. Down on the ground, everything is normal. But high above, in the darkening sky, two massive jets are on a collision course, and they have absolutely no idea.
For the people below, the first sign that something was wrong, horribly wrong, was this sudden, brilliant flash. A fireball that lit up the entire sky. It was followed by a sound that witnesses said was louder and more terrifying than any thunder they'd ever heard. And then, pieces of flaming metal started raining from the clouds.
And just like that, 349 people were gone. Every single person on both planes, 312 on the Saudi flight, 37 on the Kazakh flight, was killed. It remains to this day the deadliest mid-air collision in the history of aviation.
So that's the big question, right? The sky is huge. The idea of two planes just running into each other seems almost impossible. How could this happen, especially when they're under the watch of air traffic control? Well, the investigation would uncover a tragic chain of events where outdated technology, procedures, and most critically language created a perfect storm.
So let's break it down. It all starts with these two flights, sharing the same narrow slice of sky, with just one person on the ground responsible for keeping them apart.
Okay, so let's meet our two main players here. You have Saudia Flight 763, a giant Boeing 747 climbing out of Delhi. Its assignment, level off at 14,000 feet. At the very same time, you've got Kazakhstan Airlines Flight 1907, an Ilyushin cargo plane, coming in to land at Delhi. Its assignment, descend and level off at 15,000 feet. See the problem? They're on the exact same path, just going in opposite directions, with only 1,000 feet of planned separation. Now that's a standard buffer, but it leaves zero room for error. Absolutely none.
And the man in the middle of all of this? One guy, Air Traffic Controller VK Dutta. Now for him, on his radar screen, these weren't two planes full of people. They were just two little blips of light getting closer and closer. And he was about to watch, in horror, as those two blips became one and then vanished.
As investigators started digging into what went wrong, they found the first huge piece of the puzzle. A major technological problem that meant the air traffic controller was, in a very real sense, flying blind.
You see, back in 1996, the Delhi airport was using something called primary radar. Think of it like an old 2D map. It could show him where the planes were, but crucially, it could not show him their altitude, how high they were. He had no way to double-check if they were actually at the altitudes they were supposed to be at. Modern radar, what we call secondary surveillance radar, is totally different. It gets the altitude data beamed directly from the plane, giving the controller a full 3D picture. But Dutta didn't have that.
And this quote from India's head of civil aviation at the time, it says everything. Without the technology to back him up, the entire safety system, the lives of 349 people, depended completely on clear, accurate verbal communication. He just had to trust that the pilots were where they said they were.
And that brings us to the absolute heart of this tragedy. Because when technology can't provide a safety net, everything comes down to communication. And in those last critical moments, language itself became a deadly barrier.
So, let's walk through those final minutes. It happens so fast. The Saudi jet is climbing just like it's supposed to, up to 14,000 feet. The Kazakh flight radios in that it's reached its assigned altitude of 15,000 feet. But here's the fatal error. The plane's black box, its flight data recorder, later showed that it hadn't leveled off at all. It was still descending right through 15,000 feet. The controller, having no way of knowing this, issues his final urgent warning.
You hear that? That was the controller's warning to the Kazakh crew. He's telling them, hey, look out, there's a 747 10 miles away coming straight at you, and he's at 14,000 feet. The instruction seems perfectly clear, but what happened in that cockpit suggests it was catastrophically misunderstood.
And here is exactly how it all went wrong. The controller speaks English, the international language of aviation. The Kazakh radio operator hears him, but then he has to instantly translate those complex, rapid-fire instructions into Russian for his pilots. And the investigation concluded that somewhere in that critical translation, the warning about the other plane's altitude, 14,000 feet, was somehow interpreted as an instruction for them to descend to 14,000 feet. They thought they were following orders, but they were flying directly into disaster.
The final investigation report was just brutal. It didn't mince words. The root cause, it said, was the Kazakh plane descending when it wasn't supposed to. And why? Because of inadequate knowledge of English, leading to a fatal misinterpretation. The language barrier was officially named as the killer. You know, a disaster of this scale sends shockwaves through the entire industry. It's an unimaginable tragedy, but it becomes a painful, powerful catalyst for change, creating a legacy that has made flying significantly safer for all of us today.
So what changed? Well, a lot, and fast. India immediately created separate entry and exit corridors for its airspace, basically one-way highways in the sky. They made that modern secondary radar mandatory. They also required all aircraft to have a traffic collision avoidance system, or TCAS. That's an onboard system that lets planes talk to each other automatically. And if they get too close, it literally shouts, "Climb" or "Descend" at the pilots. But the single biggest change went right back to the very root of this crash.
This was a massive deal. Citing the Charkhi Dadri disaster, India went to the World's Aviation Authority and argued that this could never happen again. And just 2 years later, it became law. English was made the mandatory, universal language for all international flights. And it's not just about being conversational. It established a set of standardized phrases. So Level 140 means the exact same thing to a pilot from Kazakhstan, Brazil, or Japan, removing that deadly risk of translation.
The legacy of this horror in the sky is a powerful reminder that sometimes our most important safety systems aren't made of metal and microchips, they're made of words and shared understanding. And it leaves us with a pretty big question to think about. What other invisible systems in our lives, in medicine, in finance, in emergency response, rely completely on a single shared language to keep us safe? And what are the stakes when that communication breaks down?